Welcome to the very first meeting of the Tableau Public TUG in 2026. We hope you all had a very happy, healthy holiday season filled with lots of business cheer, and we are excited to be back kicking off the new year with you all. As you heard from our intro song, we are talking about all things Vizzing for social good today. And we have three amazing speakers with us to help us do that. We're going to be chatting with Celia Fryar in our community spotlight, and we'll turn it over to Katherine Pillsbury. She's going to go behind the scenes of her coffee and climate viz. Then Tableau Public TUG's very own Agata Ketterick is going to be showcasing her access to safe drinking water viz. Your hosts today include me, Lisa Trescott. I'm joined by Rob Taylor, Preeti Loda, and Eric Howard. And just a little bit more about each of us before we start things off. I'm Lisa Trescott. I am coming to you all from very sunny San Diego today. It is supposed to be 80 degrees here. It is a home of TC26, which is happening in just a few months, which is mind-blowing. I'm a research analyst at Miracosta College. I've been there since 2017. That's where I first started using Tableau. And since then, I've become an ambassador, a visionary, an Iron Viz champion. I love Tableau Public. I use it as a little creative playground to viz about topics and things that bring me joy. So I'm going to kick it over to Preeti to give an intro for herself. Preeti.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm so jealous because it is sunny up here in Boston, but we are at 9 degrees. So I'm like, it's cold. It's brutally cold out here. Hello, everyone. Preeti Loda here. I am a director of analytics and higher education using Tableau Public as a learning tool. So I learned Tableau on the job, and Tableau Public was my playground where I learned all the different charts and the way to visualize and learn the best practices. So I really enjoy being the Tableau Public TUG leader. Currently, as Nick has reminded us in the chat, and I was just telling folks that I have to submit my TC conference talks, which I have not done yet. And the deadline is tomorrow. So if anybody is doing that, just a quick reminder that the deadline is tomorrow. Go do that. It's really fun. That's it from me. Rob?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Preeti. I'm coming to you from York in England, and it's late and dark and cold here too. I am a two-time Tableau ambassador now. I've got 7 visitor days, I think, and absolutely love Tableau Public, love building wacky and fun stuff on there. It makes me happy, my creative side. By day, I'm a specialist BI analyst for JLL, where I create lots of technical, fun wizardry to help our client understand their data. Over to Eric.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Howard. I'm your swag man today, so stay tuned for that wheel of names. With the lower turnout, you have really good chances for winning swag today. So like I said, we're up against the newbie tug, and so and Matt Miller, who I'll be watching later whenever that recording comes out. But I'm a Tableau ambassador and do a lot of presentations at tugs and things. So my Tableau Public profile has my tug presentations out there, and I've really got to work on getting a visit of the day so I can have a song written about me too. I just think that is so cool. So thanks, Lisa, for all that. And
you are welcome. I would love to put you in a song. Just a quick look at the flow of today. We have just a couple announcements to kick things off before we chat with Celia Fryar in our community spotlight. Then we will have Katherine's Coffee and Climate Viz. We will take a quick break for swag with Eric, where one of you is going to win a Tableau gift card. And then Agata is going to close out the show with her access to safe drinking water viz. So Preeti mentioned it. We mentioned it in the chat. Get your sessions or proposals for TC26 in. The deadline is tomorrow. So if you have something, a topic that you're passionate about that you want to share more with the DataFam, TC26 is a great opportunity to do that. I know we would all love to see you up on that stage. So make sure you get your proposals in by 5 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow. Another important deadline coming up. Visionary nominations and applications are due next week on the 20th. I think that's Tuesday, I think it's Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific as well. This is really your chance to nominate people in the DataFam who have helped you on your Tableau journey, whether that's, blog posts, presentations, they gave you Viz feedback, they do YouTube tutorials, whatever it is. Be sure to nominate them and get their name out there. And then also apply to be a visionary yourself, right? You might be sitting there thinking, oh, I don't do enough to be a visionary. Don't sell yourself short. You probably do more than you realize. And you never know. There is no harm in applying. So go ahead and get your application in. And then last announcement is just a plug for the DataViz, this DataViz contest that's going on right now. It's Women Plus Conductors on Broadway. This project's been really led by Steve Wexler, and he's worked with Serena Roberts, Kevin Flairledge, and myself to really bring a cool data set to you all. It was curated by Sariva Getz, who is a Broadway conductor, and it features all women and non-binary conductors and music directors on Broadway. Sariva hand collected this data. She like physically interviewed people and got information about the roles that they held. So it's super unique, really cool data set that you can explore, and you can put a Viz together, throw it up on Tableau Public. If you win, you can win $500. So it's a really great place where you can, be creative and play with some really fun data. It's due February 1st. It's also in partnership with Makeover Monday and Data Plus Music. So it is checking lots of boxes. Okay, enough announcements. Let's get into our content today. We are going to be talking with Celia Fryar, who is an Analytics and AI Educator and Tableau Academic Ambassador. In her role, she drives innovation and engagement for data analytics and cloud-based solutions, integrating and leveraging AI opportunities at every turn. As an advanced analytics and data science educator, Celia has mentored and trained professionals to successfully take the next steps in their own careers. She's an expert in unlocking potential through data and education, and with over 20 years of industry experience, Celia has managed complex projects and guided diverse teams to deliver impactful data solutions. Welcome, Celia.
Well, thank you, Lisa. Appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for being with us. So I think just first up, we always like to find out how and when you started using Tableau yourself.
Awesome. Would you like for me to share with those visits that launched me into that?
Sure, if that's, yeah.
All right. I came more from the logical side of the house, but then I was watching over the shoulder of a family member that was involved at electronic arts, and then later on at BioWare, where decisions were literally being made in 2011. And it was Tableau that was on deck doing this, where they had copied Hans Rosling's Gapminder, and they had implemented it to map out what's happening in an alpha and a beta on a game, and to convince a lead designer who was not really the numbers on a chart weren't communicating well enough, and they were discussing the robustness of various player character classes, and this Viz helped get the conversation over the edge. And then also, as they were balancing out the player journey for different things on World of Tanks, and then a big announcement that happened in when this particular game went to the Xbox, and the launch and the connection to Twitter that was free at the time. And then this one, I ended up taking a lot of this inspiration back to the classroom, which kind of like ties over, I guess, pretty tidy with what it is that I do with Tableau Public most of the time. Most of what I have on Tableau Public is directly connected to my whatever I'm teaching. So like yesterday, I did a training session on managing dashboard space. And so I have things on my profile here that are literally just very directly meant to be instructional for folks. And if I've learned something new, I like this came out of a mentorship group that I'm a part of this year. I'll have a tab or a dashboard at the end of it that is just specifically about the instructions to get it done. And I usually make sure that my things are downloadable so that it can be helpful for to speed somebody else on the way down whatever path I've been learning at that moment. So yeah, Game Night Viz, yes. Yes, very much, Nicholas. And what Lewis has done with the gaming tug has been a lot of fun as well. I got to be a part of that at one point. So yeah, that's been a big part of my journey, is what I saw happening with the consumer market and analytics there, and the visual impact of Tableau.
I love that you can tie it back to like one specific viz that drew you in.
Right,
I don't know how
right.
many people can do that. That's super cool.
Well, I got called in to help troubleshoot because I was the logic mind in the household, and then it's sitting on a big SQL engine. So whatever you're doing behind the scenes with there, I had some chops to be able to contribute, and then like, oh wait a minute, this is really cool. So
yeah. So
yeah,
what's your background in then that led you to use Tableau and kind of got you to see vizzes like that?
Yeah, so very much. I came initially, I started off as a database software developer, and ended up in networking, systems engineering, coming full circle through management back to my first love, which was about databases and SQL, and doing more than just what we can do in a spreadsheet with a bigger system, and refining data. And so then with the fact that Tableau had all sorts of calculated fields and calculations that were closely connected to SQL, that's when I got called in to do some troubleshooting along the way, and then got to see the visual appeal of it. Because you can do some really amazing stuff with a database, and people just don't appreciate it because it's still a table or a chart, right? I mean, a list of it's not graphically engaging. And so to be able to take data and make it so that it's like, oh, because especially if you're trying to, there's a lot of folks when you communicate with them. Yeah, the numbers need to be there to support the facts, but the epiphanies and the visual, the proprietary, even the intellectual property for Tableau wrapped around that visual inquiry and the interactiveness of it all, that was really, really exceptional and novel for a very long part of that, the first 15 years of Tableau's life. It really was very compelling to me. That's what set the hook for me.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Love it. So you kind of touched on this a little bit, but how do you use Tableau Public in your day-to-day work?
So I very much use it. So as you guys have kindly said, I have been honored, especially since about 2016. This phase of my career absolutely been it's almost like I've heard one of my colleagues said they're an accidental analyst. I'm kind of an accidental academician. I very much have walked along people trying to get into market or retool or lift the lid on whatever's happening with their careers. So Tableau has figured largely into that. And then the get to market part, the go to market strategy, there's always additional thought that needs to go to that, especially now with the market we're all participating in now. So student portfolios, be it a person who's been in industry a long time or someone who is emerging from another market or just coming out of their own academics, you got to have something out there that communicates that you can do the job, and it takes the heat off the interview cycle if you have evidence. Well, and it doesn't work to tell people to do something without having some of that you do yourself, because they'll like do what I say, don't do what I do. That doesn't work for any of us. So I had to go ahead and put the post out as well. So I've used it for student targets when I'm trying to hold them accountable in different immersives I've led or different class situations where I'm saying, no, don't publish something with book one. You have to finish it, do your finishing touches with your axis labels. And there's just such easy, low-hanging fruit with Tableau to raise the professionalism of what you're communicating. So exercise targets, examples for training. And then I'm digressing a little bit here, but I even saw one of those book one things inside of the Iron Viz judging I was doing this year. So really, it's just a few more seconds of refinement and the polish can be there because Tableau just makes it easy to do. So that's kind of a collection of the reasons I have really appreciated Tableau Public. And additionally, in 2020, I was invited by DataFam to create a series of training courses to help someone get ready for the desktop certification using Tableau Public. So I know there's a few pieces that we had to do more conceptual, but it really is such a deep, has become very deep and rich product, and even more so these days, to get you in line to be able to be very accomplished with your skills inside of the Tableau community.
I love that because I think we often think, oh, I'm just going to post my visits here and create a profile, but you're using it in so many more unique ways.
Yeah.
I also love the accidental analyst. I feel like the more people I talk to in the DataFam, there are very few intentional analysts.
Right? Seriously, right.
So looking back at all of your work with Tableau, do you have a favorite project that you've worked on?
I have a couple favorite data sets, and then I definitely think that one of my more current ones would qualify at the moment for my favorite. So because I worked with people getting in and getting started, a lot of my dashboarding skills were not like what I would call to be something to even talk right home about, you know? And so the managing dashboard space is one of the ones that I have just, you know, it's like a culmination of a lot of different strategies on how to reuse certain space. And it goes everything from just the regular filtering dashboard actions through set actions, proportional brushing, and then dynamic zone visibility. And also in there, I think I also tucked in how to effectively use navigation buttons where it looks like it's the same frame, but you know, you're actually moving between dashboards. So like that I feel like is a really more something to be more proud of on there. And then I have loved helping people do analysis with micromobility data sets around the earth. Most all of them in the US will publish their data. So it gives you some real world and usually a little bit larger data to do something with. It helps you mirror that kind of operational analysis that you would have to do in a real world circumstance, as well as inside Airbnb. Their data sets are usually pretty spectacular and appropriately large and then big enough, and you can tie it to a real world persona. So you know, I'm always looking for ways to help people mirror real world problems and issues to prove that they have the chops to make an immediate contribution to a professional environment. So I hope that answers the question, kind of, Lisa.
Yeah.
So,
I love that your favorite projects are data sets. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's kind of weird, right?
No,
but it all starts there, right?
It's not.
It all starts there. So yeah.
You also teach AI and analytics. So what would you say is kind of a misconception about AI that you love debunking? You know, people hear AI and have a lot of things they think.
Yeah. So it depends on my audience that I'm with. I'm finding that there is more diversity in opinions and what we need to address, right? So if I'm with my university students at USF, I have to convince them that can be wrong. So I have had a thing or two I've used, and like the thing about how many R's does the word strawberry have in it, that worked faithfully until late winter last year. So you got to have something where you can kind of like cast a little doubt on the fact that and the reality of it is, like, even with using it to do a lot of support for calculated fields or advanced calculations, stuff like that, because Tableau sits on a proprietary SQL engine, I get the chance there to show them how that I have to be specific with my prompt engineering, because prompt engineering, so first of all, let me back up a little bit. I always tell people, go for it, do it, use it, learn not only how to give a great question, but also know nowadays, especially like right now, currently, so many different engines with different purposes. So it's not just one size fits all anymore. There's a lot of special case, special uses, things that could really accelerate what you're trying to accomplish, but you got to maintain that domain expertise. You have to exercise your mind to do great critical thinking, be able to take whatever task you got and subdivide it down into smaller tasks so that you're feeding in the right kind of question and going very robust with it on how you're answering, asking the question to the LLM of choice, so that you get something that is really in line with what you need to see happen. And it is changing so rapidly. I've used it a lot of times for even my classes that are more theoretical to develop case studies. And, you know, a year ago it would give, and I would prompt it to give me links to where the citations and all that. And a year ago it would give me these links that would lead nowhere, or to the head end of a paid service or something like that. You know, whereas now the links are way more, and I'm sure my prompt is way more comprehensive nowadays, but that's, you know, it's all improving. Just at light speed, it's improving, which is, you know, you need to be using it. You need to be comfortable with it. And you need to be familiar with how to get it to help you. Right. So, and I really could talk about this part for a long time, because we have used it in our own household for a lot of purposes, including like taking pictures of ingredients on the counter and asking ChatGPT to tell me the proportions to achieve this certain flavor palette. Now you got to be able to articulate the nuances there, right? But so it's a really interesting time to be participating in the industry, and I think it's super important to be using it well. But you know, as a university professor, I will often get work that I'm like, oh, I know where this came from, and I have an agreement with my students. I say, I want you to use it, but let me just tell you that if I get something that either checks out to be 100% AI or has a lot of signatures or one of those features that we all recognize.
Yeah.
I'm just going to send it back to you and say, try again. So I'm not going to fail you. I'm just going to expect you to try again. And I had one student for the final project this year send me screenshots of his handwritten stuff because to be fair, most of his assignments prior to that moment had been where I'm like seeing the double dashes and the words and the things that were incongruent with his person in class. And I'm like, okay. So yeah. Yes, exactly. Freezy. So I want people to be proficient, but I also want them to be the author. Stay in the authorship side. So
yeah, don't let it just completely think for you in all aspects.
Right, because there's still a gap, and there's still nuances it'll miss. The domain expertise is not it's coming along so well, so fast. But you really need to treat it like your first lieutenant, your co-pilot, and stay in charge of it. So besides, it really can serve us well like that.
Yeah. I love the reminder to ask it to give it sources, because I've done that. And it's like, I didn't actually get this from anywhere. And I was like, I can tell.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, precisely.
So you're obviously proficient in it. You're very proficient in AI. How have you used it to create or enhance any of your vizzes or your dashboards?
Well, I probably use it mostly there for calculations, to be fair. I'm not really sure, and I have it on my to-do list to dive in deeper with the MCP protocol models and get more prolific with that. I've also been, but then I'm also participating presently in the semantic beta for Tableau Next, and then I did a lot this last summer, spending a lot of time trying to negotiate with the analytics agent there. And then what it would take for Concierge to work well, and what was going to have to happen on the semantic model documentation side for us to, again, feed the model the kind of information it needs in the same way that we need to add a great prompt into ChatGPT now to get it to do something well. But then also to, I feel like that is going to be a game changer where the type of role that we'll play as analysts when we're working with a product like Tableau Next is going to be a little bit different, but and then they're working to make it so that it's more suggestive of what those documentation and data governance side provisions might look like, but you still have to remain as the author and in charge and bring that domain expertise. And, so back to your original question, I'm using it mostly for calculations and for troubleshooting, and for sometimes I'll brainstorm with it on what would be a creative way to show this or that. I'm not really finding it to be quite as helpful along those lines. Yesterday, I was actually asking it to help me convey a certain idea, and the stuff it gave me helped me like launch on a train of thought, but what it suggested was like, I don't know about that. So I think that it's especially on the creative side, I'm not finding, I would be curious to know what you do with your creative side of that, but I'm trusting it more on the core logic side.
Yeah, I don't use it too much for the creative stuff, or if I have, it has maybe helped as like a jumping off point, but didn't quite get all the way there, kind of like you're saying. Okay, moving on kind of from AI, what's a current Tableau feature that you're excited about, or kind of you want to explore or learn more about?
Right. So the thing that I am trying to master, and as logic-based as this, it's just, I'm a little embarrassed to admit this almost, but map layers. I'm seeing how that it's more efficient. It has potential for causing performance increases as well. If I don't have a Tableau workbook, like I was working with somebody the other day to use an accelerator workbook and try to convert it into their data. 106 worksheets, like 106. How's that ever going to be fast, right? So it's just not exactly. You get any slides of data in there, and it's just going to die. So we just need to do any. I think that map layers offers an efficiency there and a lighter weight load potentially. And so many of my folks are dealing with really big data sets. So that's what I'm hoping to get more familiar with. I've built several where they've used that, and I know it comes down to just a grid, but somehow I'm like not quite connecting all the dots yet to be quick with it, especially. So that's my learning for the moment.
Yeah. Map layers, once you kind of get a handle on them, are very, very powerful. We've had a couple of fantastic presentations at this TUG before about.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Okay, last question. If you could give the Tableau Public community, the DataFam, one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, I did think about this a little bit more because when we last chatted about this, the thing that I would just encourage is just stay involved, get involved. If you're not already involved, this sort of community is so helpful, productive, and then also, if you're not involved in Makeover Monday and Makeover Wednesdays and posting those on Tableau Public, those are just a great way to grow your skills, refine your skills, see other ways of doing things, because I think that we get prolific with a few things, and it's really helpful to us on Tableau Public, especially, to be able to see the variety of other approaches and other methods, and to keep your methods fresh and your mind open to different ways of seeing data and creating epiphanies, because this is the right place to be if you like change and if you like to have a growth mindset and you like to learn new things, because it is not going to ever just be the same as it ever was. And that should be an advantage, not a frustration, right? So, and Tableau Public figures largely into that, in both having a repository of it's remarkable on the earth, to be fair. And it's one of the reasons why I kept coming back to Tableau, as I was teaching, because you want to really do well, you need that kind of like iron sharpening iron kind of dynamic of, contrast and, encouragement and idea sources. And Tableau has really done a good job of continuing to support this platform and expanding it even this last year or two, right? And so that's what I would say. Just press in, do more, and, don't be close-minded about how it's supposed to be, because that won't serve you well. So.
Yeah. That's great advice. And I completely agree. All the community projects, I think, are how most of us here have gotten better and learned more, and seeing what else is out there and we're capable of.
Yeah. It's awesome. Really been remarkable. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, sharing your own Tableau experience and journey with us, talking AI. We really appreciate having you here.
I appreciate that, Lisa. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.
You bet.
All right, I'm going to turn it over now to Preeti and Katherine to talk about some coffee and climate.
I'm excited to introduce Katherine. Katherine Pillsbury is a principal business intelligence engineer at Hasbro, where she manages the analytics team for their D&D Beyond and Hasbro Pulse e-commerce marketplace. That was a mouthful.
Sorry.
No, enjoyed it. She formerly worked on D&D, and before that spent several years at Amazon. She has been using Tableau for about 8 years now. And if you want to add about the Viz, the visualization, I just read the note you sent me, and I'm just realizing, I'm just reading it. Sorry, people. So the visualization she's presenting today was her finalist submission to an Amazon internal Tableau data visualization contest. It is called Coffee and Climate Change. It has over 12,000 views. Yay. So do check it out. But Katherine, I'm really excited for this walkthrough of the presentation. Before I hand it over to you, just a quick note, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to use the chat option to pose questions. Katherine and I agreed that we are happy to take questions while she's presenting, but if you want to hold on till the end of it, that works fine too. The Q&A option is also open now, so please feel free to use both the features. Katherine, please do take away.
Well, good. And sorry I messed you up by sending you not a verbatim speech at the last minute even. So that's on me. So as mentioned, this is my visual coffee and climate change. And this dashboard was built when I was working at Amazon as an entry to their internal Tableau visualization contest for their Amazon Salesforce Day that anybody at Amazon could enter, but it had to be Tableau, which is kind of rare for that. So I was a server admin at the time, used Tableau all the time, thought it was a great way to build some non-work dashboards. The first question is going to be, did you win? No, I got second. My spouse won. I actually borrowed the trophy though. So ta-da, this is the trophy. It's not mine. It's just on loan. But yeah, so either way, it's still a good miss. I got Viz of the Day. I don't think Nick got Viz of the day though, so I win in the end. I win the internet clout. So about the Viz, the theme, so the parameters for this contest were one of 3 sustainable development goals that they wanted to focus on. So the fourth one, quality education, or sustainable cities and communities, or climate action, or all 3. Now, to help us, the organizers of the competition provided some data, and that is this. I'm not going to download it from there because it takes a ton of time. It's huge. So hop into this and start poking around, and oh my gosh, what is this? So we started with this. It doesn't get much better from that. Lots of blank data, completely overwhelming. Reminded me of honestly the worst parts of my day job, where you get like massive tables of numbers with a bunch of inconsistency and abbreviations and stuff. So what I ended up doing was giving up and walking away for a little bit and being like, okay, you know what? Maybe next year. So really, this is the story of how did I get re-inspired. So it seems like I wasn't the only one which were struggling with lack of inspiration. So the organizers reached out to say, okay, hey, you don't have to use this data. This is just for help. Also, the goal of this competition is really to get people at Amazon, which was a notorious table of numbers kind of company, let them know what they can do in Tableau and move beyond the sort of table of numbers, and also to start thinking about these goals. So I didn't have to use the data. Also, I guess, now that I had only a few weeks left to do this, perhaps the tight timeline helped. So recommitted, time is of the essence. Now what do I do? So honestly, the topic was kind of a win. I just started searching for climate change. We live in Seattle, so, why not coffee? So I found this pretty cool article about how coffee is affected by climate change, and the, sort of the, nice maps and stuff like that, a bunch of academic, but this is what really stood out is, okay, this is an equatorial plant. It grows at this temperature range that reminds me more of my hometown, 64 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 to 21 Celsius. That's kind of cold. So what does that mean in terms of climate change? And that was my mission statement, and that's what I moved forward with. So that's what you see here at the top. And then honestly, the rest of the data source gathering was to sort of provide context to that statement of like, okay, there's climate change. Okay, there's coffee, which is apparently a shade plant. What does that mean when you put this together? So in this dashboard, the story informed a lot of the data gathering rather than the other way around. So obviously, you can't cherry pick your data, but in my case, there's a lot of academic research, so I didn't have to do a whole lot of that. So if we get into the dashboard itself, we can peek at some of these data sources. As I mentioned, time was of the essence. So you're going to see a lot of sheet ones, news, obviously not best practices, but that's the great thing about your personal projects is you don't have to make them best practices if you want to, if you don't want to. So this is a sheet one. It's manual data that I put into a Google Sheet, and it describes that information I found in that article. So this is, not very complicated data. It's going to be very consistent throughout this. So if we go back to our dashboard and we go here, like that's literally it. We have the status, we have the tooltips. There are 4 or 5 attributes in here, and that is what goes into it. So not very complex. Same with this map, and we'll go back into these when we talk story later, but not a whole lot. very straightforward. I think the most complicated thing we'll run into is the waffle chart. So let's get into design then, because that's where the majority of this. So first, I put the context statement that stood out to me. What caught my eye when I was looking through this story is, hey, actually, coffee has this very narrow temperature. And basically, citations are at the bottom because that's pretty much where this is cited from. So then what sort of chart can visualize this? Let's, I thought about a bunch of different charts, but ended up with this sort of waterfall looking thing. And these lines are hard-coded. These are just floating lines and floating icons. And the interesting attribute of this visual is the tooltips, which are, of course, hard-coded in. In this case, they're hard-coded into the data source itself. Another way to do it, and I believe I do this later, is to just create a big if statement that does this as well. So both perfectly valid ways of doing it. So we start with, okay, what's the sort of grab? What are we talking about? Second, let's set the background. So this is literally the landscape, the world landscape of where are we looking at? What place in the geography does coffee grow? Brazil, a lot of Brazil. And then Vietnam as well, and Indonesia. So really highlighting the countries that this is prominent in. So I did limit it a little bit. I'm going to probably break my dashboard playing around with this, but like we could have looked up to 76 countries. What I found is, yeah, the US grows things. The US grows everything. So really limited it to just the countries we cared about in this sort of visual, the ones that would actually have this impact. So editing, a lot of editing to kind of tell the story rather than just going with what the data said in this case. And then again, editing the map to be only the lines, really showing off the colors of the blobs of the countries there and really setting everything else to the background. Yes, China does grow coffee. China is another one of those countries. Both of these are, in fact, countries that their agricultural industry is just so dang big that they grow a little bit of everything. So there's just, now, there's a whole story about contribution to GDP being important to them versus, like, let's say Ethiopia. It's a major contributor to their economy. But yeah, interestingly enough, some countries I didn't expect popped up. All right, so third, we have to connect these two stories. So we have two stories. Okay, cool. Coffee's a shade plant. That's nice. Coffee grows here. That's also great. Okay, now here's where we put it together. Okay, what happens when the world gets warmer? What happens to this apparently extremely sensitive plant? And that's where we get into, like, okay, what visual can we use to put this together? At the time, I think I built this dashboard in 2022. So waffle charts were super popular at the time. I don't know if they still are, but they were pretty popular at the time. I also like the representation of percentages visually, which I find I don't care for pie charts in that regard. So I wanted not a pie chart. So waffle chart was a good way to show off the information without being a pie chart. Also, if you think about this conceptually as like a bag of coffee, with a perfect 100 beans in it, this sort of visualizes how much coffee you're not getting in this case. So that was the story I was going with this. How much coffee will you not get in this case? So we're going to also, you'll notice a few floating boxes. If I didn't have a nice tooltip, or the visual itself did not have a story to tell with the tooltip, I tend to just cover it over, because then nobody can break anything by clicking it or not even, then I can be lazy and not even put the hide tooltips on there. The story's all here. I just wrote it out. So part of the competition was that you have to visually present your dashboard on stage, which may have contributed to my lack of winning, but the story needed to be really evident on the page, and it couldn't have a whole ton of like intricacies, or I didn't feel that a whole ton of intricacies would come off well because of how it was being presented. So what I did do is pull the data for how much the climate was expected to change. And this was using a pretty cool site for data. So I'm going to switch back to data gathering a little bit. And that is the Food and Agriculture Organization stat data. So they have a ton of data for a ton of different countries about different agricultural indicators. They also link back, it looks like this is new, they link back to the SDG indicators, which are their sustainable development goals that we talked about earlier. So this is another way that it sort of brings the story together about how this is related to climate change. So food security, different agricultural food supply chain, all ton of stuff in here. So that was one source that I grabbed both of those from. Pop back to there. So that's where this coffee data comes from, and the production data. So this is not a text box. This is a sheet, and this sheet is more hard-coded information in order to make it show up. So the loss estimate and this hard text. So this is just calculated information with hard text in it. So that's it, the percentage. So that makes the text show up as sort of this dynamic. So we're going to click around and make that dynamic now. So if we're clicked on Brazil, we're defaulting to Brazil because that's our biggest story. If we clicked Vietnam, for example, it would switch 25%. And then also there are ranges. So the best case climate model prediction, so limited amount of climate change that will occur, they're still losing 25% of their production. Max case, it uses the worst case in the data source. That's where we land. So we're losing 45%. Other countries may be worse impacted, 75% gone, or in several countries in Africa, Ethiopia, if the non-shade area expands, they could lose 90% of their coffee. Considering how much of their hectares are used for coffee, that's a significant hit to them. So that's the story I wanted to tell there. The last part of what I got into here is, okay, now I want some case studies. So now that we've made the connection, now that we know why, how do we personalize this a little bit in order to talk more about the actions below, so the call to action. So a couple things had happened recently. So one of the major ones during the time was a drought in Brazil, which is the largest country up there that we were talking about. And okay, what happened to coffee? The prices went way up. And you actually kind of see that happening now as well. So very recently, prices of coffee have gone up very significantly due to supply chain disruptions. So what we see is when there's limited coffee, prices skyrocket. It's something people will pay a ton of money for, given the case. Now, that's great in some cases, but in the case of droughts and such, that's not so great because your farmers don't actually have beans to sell at those lovely high prices. So I wanted to tell the story of like, okay, what can you expect to happen to your cup of coffee if this occurs? So great, cool. Hypothetically, 90% of coffee's gone, but what does that mean to me? So your coffee is going to cost twice what it does, is what this is telling. So this one keeps the tooltips. It has it is new too. It has a constant line in there to show this. So this is just a hard-baked constant line because I was very selective on what data displays. So not a lot of dynamic information here. We limited it to just the years that I cared about. So again, a bunch of editing to make this sort of present like this. So it's a little bit of a static state and time, which is pretty common for a lot of my personal Vizes, because thinking about dynamic shifts in business over time is what I do in my day job. So maybe it's not so fun to do for fun. The last visual here, this is sort of another alternative to like, okay, cool, you said Arabica coffee. What does that mean? It's like, okay, there's two types of coffee. And one is certainly cheaper, but it's really just used in instant coffee. So I wanted to present the concept of like, okay, you mentioned this specific type of coffee. What is also available? So just kind of contextualizing. And then this has one of those fun little overlapping bar charts, which I like to, what I really like to do with this, and maybe not for this one, is to do forecasts or budgets versus actuals with this kind of visual. So this one's comparing two things, but that are related to each other. But what you can do if you have more categories, like in that case where you have categories and then forecasts and budgets, like you can overlap them and then you can see where you're at versus budget. It's an alternative to having the little budget dash if you want to put a bigger title in here or something like that. To do that, the rows or the axis of this is just set at a numerical value. And I played around with this a bunch. So if you throw that to that, it shifted like that, which is not what I wanted. So I just played around with it until I got what I wanted. And now I've broken it. Oh, well. We'll unbreak it when we're done. All right. So final thing, because this was a presentation on screen, and honestly, I think we should always have this in our day-to-day work, is the call to action, the recommendation, the so what, where do we go next? Like, cool, you've presented all this data to me. Now, what am I supposed to think about it? In this case, I wanted the audience to think about how to change their perception and what could be done in these cases. So like, we're trying to educate and we're trying to sort of push the, like, what can we do about climate change? So first case, push it back to the, we should try to go for the minimum worst case scenario versus the catastrophic scenario. So here's how you can do it. Eliminate greenhouse gas emissions. Amazon's a big company and has some influence there. So, that's an important one to take with that audience. And then some other ones that, farmers need a consistent assured income. Maybe you buy, instead of buying sort of generic coffee that may be being bought at commodity price, you buy from specialist coffee roasters that are paying for their beans a proper amount of money. And then a couple of other things, but by and large, this is just the call to action for the group. And I always like to end with something like this. So putting it all together, the sort of design I was going for, it's all coffee themed. So background kind of is the color of a latte with a little too much milk. The top graph, this is the color of coffee beans and a little bit darker and lighter coffee plants. And I was going for a bit of a minimalist, like coffee house vibe. So, but you know what? I never finished my art degree. I'm not the best designer. So what I did is I told people like, okay, here's the theme I'm going for. And then I show them the dashboard and just take their feedback on like, does that feel like this? And just kept iterating until I got to that. And then, yes, somebody said, oh, it needs like a coffee like splatter or stain. And that's where this came from. It's like, you know what? It does. It needs something visually. So just asking for feedback on design. Does this feel like what you want it to feel like? Because you look at this and you end up looking at numbers all the time and you see it all in pieces and parts. And I even still do that. It's hard to put together the full design. So that was kind of the put it together, give it sort of a thematic element, which is not my strong suit. So rely on help where you need it. You need help is what I'd recommend there. So that is how we got here. And I can open it to any questions.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Katherine, for walking us through the entire process and showcasing it. And trust me, that coffee stain in the end sort of makes sense. It ties in with all the coffee beans in the story you're trying to tell. We do have a lot of conversation going in the chat, but I will start with the Q&A question. Nick is asking, why did you enter the Salesforce Day contest? Any tips to convincing people to give their local Viz contests a try?
You know, the context I would give, I think in the end, if you're wanting to win, there were less entrants in this competition than I thought there would be, because every time I'm always like, oh, I'm going to be one of like 1,000 people and I'm going to have the worst Viz and it's going to be terrible. And that never happens. So like, give it your best shot. Worst case, you have a portfolio piece to add to your Tableau Public portfolio, and best case, you end up first place. You could end up first place, or second place and get Viz of the Day.
Yeah.
So that's, the other thing I will say is maybe if you're thinking of it from a truly selfish perspective, is I am a manager. I hire analysts and BIEs, and I always want to see a Tableau Public portfolio. I don't see it nearly enough, but even if your dashboards are okay, it lets me know that you think about this in your personal life, and you're thinking about your job and how to develop, rather than it just being your day job. And I find that sort of passion for data makes a big difference in the people I hire. So if you're thinking about this truly from a how does this benefit me perspective, like that, I always recommend it. And it's a good excuse to potentially get kudos with your team and company too. So.
Oh, totally agreed, Katherine, and agreed. Yeah, it will add to your portfolio. You will build something, and who knows, it might get you an award, or it can get you a Viz of the Day, or if not, you learned a new visualization. Because for a second, I was like, what is this chart that looks a little offset, but it's a bar? And thank you to Rob for mentioning it, that it is an offset bar chart. I haven't had the opportunity to create one, but I look forward to building one of those. The last question I have for you before I let you go is, a lot of times as we are developing or designing, it is hard to give up your visualization, right? Because you always feel like there is a room for improvement, or I want to add one more analysis to this. How do you deal with that?
The unhealthy answer is I run it up to the end of the clock and stuff things in until someone tells me to stop. But the better answer is, since I need help with design, since I know I need help with design, and I tend to not think about the composition till the very end, it's sort of a forcing function, like, oh, I need people to look at this and make sure that my composition is correct and that it's giving off the vibe I'm going for. And once I put it on, like, okay, I need other people to look at this, then I find myself editing to make it easier for this hypothetical reviewer in my mind, who's a real person, as opposed to the sort of like the free form like field that you have to enter it in, where it goes cast off into the void. So when I'm thinking about an actual person looking at this, it tends to make that better in my mind. It's also giving me time to review before submission, as opposed to just throwing it out there, which I tend to do at work sometimes. So it's not how.
No, I hear you. Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, sometimes like the dashboard design sometimes also depends on your audience that you are trying to showcase it to. So I agree. Okay, thank you so much again, Katherine, for doing this presentation. Learned a lot. I was surprised that India is in top 3 growing coffee out there. I was like, oh, I didn't know that.
Right.
But that was informational. Thank you for sharing all your best practices and your data sources. I hope you enjoyed this and look forward to talking to you more.
Yeah, so it's time for some swag. Thanks everybody sticking around. Got everybody queued up and ready to go. So let's spin. Oh, Christy, you were so close. And Mari too. So it looks like it's Mohammed Lee. Mohammed, if you will send me an email to the tableau.public.tug@gmail.com or drop your email in the chat here to me in a DM, we will get you set up with a $50 gift certificate to the Tableau store. And thanks for attending today. Now we'll turn it over to Rob and Agata.
Thank you, Eric, and congratulations to the winner. So it feels weird introducing Agata. She's obviously one of us, but she's going to be sitting on the other side of the screen, I guess, today. She's an absolute Tableau powerhouse. Agata's got, I think she discovered Tableau in 2016, correct me if I'm wrong. And in that time, she's achieved 11 Viz of the days, which is phenomenal. And she'll be sharing one of those with us shortly. One of the things that really I found interesting, in 2020, you completed every Makeover Monday challenge, which is just bonkers. I'm not sure how you managed that. And I'd love you to tell us after I finish intro, any tips you'd give the community about doing something like that. She is works at Ghana and is obviously a co-lead of the public user group and also the Northern New England user group. So yeah, I'm very excited to see you talk through your Viz. But yeah, before you start, any tips for anyone taking on a Makeover Monday challenge, or on the other hand, any tips for anyone who wants to get more involved in the community? And
you know, I actually talk a little bit about that during this, so I will get into it. So,
sorry, I missed that being sick.
No, no worries.
Yeah.
I didn't
Okay, well,
it,
I'll hand over to you then, Agata, and show us what you've got.
All right. Well, thank you for the great intro, Rob. So today I'll be walking you through the process of creating this access to safe drinking water visualization. So for this project, I looked at global progress toward universal access to safe drinking water by 2030, which is one of the key targets of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So using global data, this visualization shows how access to safely managed drinking water varies across countries and regions, highlighting where access is high and where significant gaps still exist. It also looks at how things have changed over time, so helping us understand how close or how far we are from reaching this critical human development goal. But before I get into what specifically inspired this project, I want to take a quick step back and share a little context about how I found Tableau, because that background, I think, really shaped how I approach work like this. So I discovered Tableau, I think it was back in like 2017, because I needed to create a map. And I had absolutely no idea how to do that in Excel, which up until then was the only tool I had used to create charts and graphs. So after a lot of Googling and head scratching, I created my very first Tableau map, and I immediately found the tool to be much more intuitive and honestly more fun to use than Excel. So this, oh, if I can flip this, okay. I don't have access to that map that I created, but I just kind of whipped this up. It looked something like this. And it was amazing to me how easy it was to create it once I finally kind of learned the basics and figured out how to do it. So I started using Tableau more and more at work. And after attending my first Tableau conference back in 2019, I set a personal goal to really improve my data visualization and Tableau skills. So as part of that goal, I decided to participate in every single Makeover Monday challenge that year. I don't know, I just had to make a big goal that was gonna work for me. So posting that very first project was pretty intimidating for me, especially sharing it publicly on social media. And it was a really huge commitment, but it was something I was genuinely excited about. and I intentionally carved out time to focus on it. I guess my tip is, if you really want to commit to something like that, you can usually find time. You can give up something. You might have to give up something. For me, it was like, vegging on the couch in the evenings, but I think it was definitely worth it. So Makeover Monday is definitely an incredible resource within the Tableau community. And it's had a huge impact on lots of people, including me. So once I started participating in Makeover Monday regularly, I learned about all kinds of other community projects. I participated in several of those, and then I even entered Iron Viz a couple of times. So what you're seeing here are 3 of my earliest visualizations on Tableau Public. And then these are 3 more recent projects. And the difference here reflects, a significant investment of time in developing my design thinking as well as my Tableau skills. Most of what I've published on Tableau Public has been inspired by community projects, while a few projects come kind of from more random ideas or topics that caught my interest along the way. Before I created this access to drinking water dashboard, I had actually been a little bit stuck and kind of looking for inspiration, something to get me excited about creating another viz. So I knew I wanted to create something, but I wasn't quite sure what I was going to create. And around that time, I came across a post on LinkedIn about a visualization competition hosted by the Data School. Finalists were required to attend an event in New York City, which I wasn't going to be able to do, so I wasn't even eligible to win. But the competition, listed several optional data sets, and when I started exploring them, one caught my eye. And as I dug into the data on global water access, I realized I wanted to learn more about this topic, and that curiosity ultimately became the foundation for this visualization. So my process definitely varies depending on my goals and the data. Sometimes I start with a very clear vision of what I want to build before I even open Tableau. As an example, in the very early days of the COVID pandemic, I was trying to balance working from home with 3 small kids who were also at home since schools were closed. And I noticed that they said mom a lot, like a lot. And because I am who I am, I wanted to know exactly how many times they said mom in a day, and wanted to see what that would look like. Around that same time, I had read Dear Data. So that book and the concept of exploring and visualizing personal data was top of mind for me. If you haven't had a chance to check out this book, I highly recommend it. It's beautiful and amazingly creative, a little bit different from most of our day-to-day. So I kept track for an entire week of how many times I heard mom, like for each kid. And at some point during that week, I definitely remember having, this picture in my head that would look something like this radial sunburst chart. So when I started building, I had an idea of what I wanted to build in my head. So this is what I ended up with. And to this day, this is one of my favorite vizes, definitely very, very personal viz. But for this project, I didn't start with a specific chart or visual idea at all. What I needed to do first was explore the data, kind of understand what it was saying, figure out the story I wanted to tell, and then choose the charts that best supported that story. And for this one, as well as some other visualizations I've done, what kind of helps me is to actually write out the story. and then figure out, pick the charts that go along with that. So I live in Maine, in the United States, directly as far as possible as you can get from Lisa, and very different weather here. So it's pretty cold this time of year. But over the years, I've noticed that whenever I travel outside of the state, the water tastes different. I might be a little bit biased, but I feel like we have some of the best water at home here. And as I explored this data set, it struck me how incredibly lucky I am, and how much something like that I take for granted. So, almost 3/4 of the global population has access to safely managed drinking water, but billions of people still don't. So I knew I wanted to acknowledge both of those truths in the introduction, kind of the progress that's been made, but also the significant gaps that still exist. So once I had that story clear, the design decisions kind of became much easier. So I'm just going to switch over to Tableau and kind of show you, walk you through how I supported the story kind of visually. So as I worked through the story, I knew I'd be relying pretty heavily on bar charts. I actually ended up with 5 separate bar charts in this visualization. I also knew that because this was global data, and because regional disparities are such a big part of the story, I would likely include a map. And then I also created these 2 bar charts, or these 2 area charts at the bottom to show trends over time. But going back up to the first bar chart up here, I wanted to add a little bit of visual interest. I've made a billion bar charts over years. I was getting a little bit bored of just the simple bar charts, so I wanted to add a little something to them, but I also wanted a consistent visual design throughout the visualization. So this first bar chart breaks down the global population by the type of drinking water people have access to. And because I knew people would scan these quickly, I wanted kind of a strong visual anchor. So I added these darker reference lines on the left to help guide the reader's eye. I also included definitions directly in the tooltips. So you'll see that if we hover over basic here, you'll see that 18% of people have access to improved water, which is safe drinking water. But for basic, you may need to travel up to 30 minutes round trip to retrieve it, while safely managed water is available at your home and available when you need it. So I'm kind of using this first bar chart kind of as a definition as well too. So I used kind of a similar style for bar charts throughout the rest of the dashboard. I don't know if there's an official name for this type of bar chart, but it's something I first saw on the Flairledge Twins blog and really liked how it looked. At a high level, this is just a dual axis chart. It has a bar on one axis and a Gantt bar on the other, but I can just do a quick demo and show you how to build something like this. Okay. So first, you just drag water source over to rows, and then this value field has the percentage of the global population using that type of water. So the data is pretty simple. And so we have a basic bar chart, but to add those fancy darker lines, all we have to do is just add a min1 directly into the column here. And then adjust this axis to start at 1. With a fixed end at 2 also. And then we just select dual axis. And there's no need to synchronize these since the axes don't even have related data there. I don't know why Tableau decides to change those into circles, but for the first one here, we just have to change that back to bars and remove measure names. And then we can add water source to color, and those colors are already preset in here. And then just change the opacity here to 15%. All right, and then from there, the second mark, we want to change this to a Gantt bar. And then also remove this from color and then add water source to color here. So you'll notice that they're like super tiny. Actually, change this to entire view so you can see a little bit better. So what you can do is actually add this to size. I happen to know that 0.01 is going to work for what I need. Obviously, if you're building this for the first time, you might need to mess around with it a little bit or use a parameter to figure out the right size. But since I had already built this, I knew that would work. So just a little trial and error to get the right size. And then we just want to add the labels and value in here as well. Just kind of increase the size there. And I just matched the mark color. And then the very last piece was to just add percentage. Like these were whole values in the data. So you just go to format and then add a % as a suffix here. And I think I just used 1 decimal point. And just like that, we have our bar chart. So it takes a little bit more effort, but it gives it a little extra flair. All right, so the other thing I wanted to show you is the map. All right, so the map is showing the percentage of each country's population that is using safely managed drinking water. So these bright pink countries, less than 25% of the population has access to safe water. And in the really dark blue, 99% of the population, or over 99% of the population has access to safe drinking water. So I actually noticed while I was prepping for this session that I had a typo in this paragraph. So you always find something. So I'm gonna have to fix that at some point. But you may notice that this map doesn't look like Tableau's default world map, and that is intentional. So if I had used the default map, this would look something like this. And it's not terrible, but I just thought it could be better. So yes, it takes a little bit more time and effort, and I would definitely not recommend doing this for every project. But for this visualization, I felt it was important and that it would add a little extra something. So if you haven't worked much with maps, you might not be familiar with the different map projections that exist. I certainly wasn't at first. I actually remember seeing this visualization by Brian Moore and being amazed by how great his map looked compared to the maps I had created in Tableau. Conveniently for me and for all of us, Brian wrote a great blog post about how to create a map like this. So that is definitely a great resource. But before I show you how to create it, just a little bit about the different projections. So Tableau's default projection is called the Mercator projection, and it was created for navigation. So it preserves direction, but it significantly distorts area. So the further away you get from the equator, the more exaggerated landmass size becomes. So this is why Greenland appears nearly as large as Africa. But it actually turns out that Africa is about 14 times bigger than Greenland. So back in the 60s, Arthur Robinson developed the Robinson projection. And this is kind of as a compromise. It balances distortions in area, shape, distance, and direction. And it's more visually pleasing and a more truthful representation of the world. So definitely makes a great choice for world maps. So at this point, you might be wondering, okay, that's a great little map lesson, but how do you actually build this in Tableau? So like I mentioned, there are a ton of great resources available online, but I can just show you a quick demo. First step is to download a shapefile, a Robinson shapefile, and I'll share a link with to Brian Moore's blog post with you, which has all these links, which has links to all the necessary files available. It also has step-by-step directions, but I already have this workbook connected to the data sources, but I can just show you how I linked them. So this UNICEF data is my global water access data. And then this country shapefile is the Robinson shapefile. And you can see all I did was connect the two on one field, which was this ISO country code. It's the cleanest way to connect the two. And you might not have these country codes in your data that you're working with, but it's something that's readily available and pretty easy to add to your data source. So from there, you will see that the shapefile has this geometry field in it. And all you have to do is double click that and it'll add it to your map. And it'll give you the Robinson projected map right on top of your default Tableau map. If you hover over this, you'll see that it's just like this one giant shape, essentially. If you add the country code over to detail, it breaks up the countries into their own separate little shapes. So from here, all you have to do is, you can't get rid of the default map, the default Tableau map, but you can hide it. So all you have to do is click on map, background layers, and then just deselect all of these layers. And the map just kind of disappears. And then from here, all I did was, I actually had to create this fields to get my colors. Just drag that onto color. And then all I didn't love how this was looking. So what I did was I actually changed the border color to white. And I felt like that looked a little bit better. And there you go, just like that, you have a map that just looks a little bit more visually pleasing, in my opinion. All right, so these bar charts, kind of same idea as the bar chart I showed you, so I won't go over those. And then at the very bottom here, I had one more chart type, which is these area charts. I'm not going to get into a demo of those. They're pretty simple, but I do want to point out that I ran into a little bit of frustration here. I'm showing actual as well as projected numbers in these area charts, and I wanted that to be very clear, right? The difference between the two. I spent some time trying to figure out how to do this within Tableau. I didn't have a ton of time for this project, so I wasn't able to really figure anything out simply. So I made a trade-off, right? I knew I could create a label pretty quickly outside of Tableau to differentiate between the two types of numbers. So I brought those in as images, and I don't usually love to do something like that. It wouldn't work well with dynamic data, but this was kind of a one-off project. I wasn't going to be updating this data, so it was going to do the job in a pinch. And since I was going to be creating an image for the project, that kind of gave me an excuse to play around with some background ideas. So I'll just jump over to Figma here. So you can use any design tool or even PowerPoint to create images, but I started using Figma a few years ago because it is a pretty solid free version. There is a little bit of a learning curve, so I won't go into a tutorial here or anything, but I did want to spend a few minutes talking about the design choices I ended up making. Like I said earlier, unlike some of my other projects, design didn't really lead this one. It really came later once I had the story and structure in place. But what you can see in this design file is kind of see the progression through my ideas. Let me just zoom in here real quick. So I started with the two elements I knew I wanted. So I came here really for these actual and projection labels, right? But since I was already here, I also created this Learn More button. I often, in a lot of my visualizations, I like to give a user kind of like a next step if they want to be able to dig a little deeper. So here I added a Learn More button, and that links directly to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so from there, I started thinking about just the whole background as a whole. So at first, I just had kind of like this plain white. It was kind of boring. I didn't love it. So I started playing around with this idea of using an image in the background. So I just sort of found this water themed image. When I brought this into Tableau, I didn't love it. I felt like it was too noisy and kind of competed with charts and text, and I wasn't loving it. I'm still on a mission to use an image successfully in a Viz. I feel like I see a lot of people do it, and it looks great when they do it. I feel like whenever I try, I don't like how it looks. So I don't know. It's still something to do, but so I kind of settled on this water themed border, and then I used that white panel on the inside so that the text and the charts were easily where that they'd stand out and pop. So all I do then is export that as an image and then plop it into Tableau as a background image. And if I jump back into Tableau over here, you'll notice I wasn't quite done. I thought I was done, but I still felt like it was missing something. I had used a bunch of white space to separate out the different sections, but I still felt like they were kind of bleeding together. So I decided to add these kind of border lines to kind of give visual cues to the different sections. And this is really super simple to do in Tableau. That's just a blank object, and then you use a background color. And then I just use a bunch of padding to get the size that I want. But after I added those, I still felt like something was missing. And then I was pretty excited when I had the idea to add these little water droplets to kind of send a visual cue to separate out the different sections without adding any more text or any other clutter. But if there is one design tip I'd like to leave you all with, it's to not be afraid of white space. I definitely feel like over the years, I started using more and more white space. Here I added, a generous margin all around, and then lots of blank space between the different sections, so they kind of have room to breathe. And then almost everything I shared today, from participating in Makeover Monday to kind of learning more about map projections and trying out different map projections, to even using Figma, all of that came from learning within the Tableau community. So I know I said there's one design tip, but if there's an overall takeaway, I guess it's that kind of experimenting and borrowing ideas and sharing what you learn is how we all get better. So thank you so much.
That was fantastic, Agata. Thank you. There's so many purposeful little things you've done throughout that dashboard that just really make it stand out and bring it to life. It was really good to see, and I've never seen that map thing before, so I'm definitely going to be digging into that blog. I put it in the chat for everyone.
Oh, great that you found it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fantastic viz. Thank you very much for walking it through, and obviously your journey as well. Really inspiring. And like you said, if anyone wants to get better, set yourself a challenge to learn and develop, and with a goal in mind of completing something. And yeah, it's amazing how much you can come on in a short amount of time. Lots of love in the chat for the bar charts and the design choices too.
Awesome.
Lisa, is it back to you now?
Sure is. I also will just say, I think a lot of people think to get a viz of the day, you have to have super crazy charts. But I think Agata's viz shows that you do not. You can have just really beautifully designed, bar charts, area charts, maps, and you too can get a viz of the day. I'm also going to be borrowing your color palette, Agata, because I was going to talk about color, but I could not for the life of me remember where you got it.
I know I spend way too much time on color. It will take me hours and hours to settle on a palette, but I don't remember. I probably saw it somewhere. What I do a lot is like go through Tableau Public, find a color palette I love, and like just figure out use the little eyedropper.
Shows.
And steal the hex codes.
Yeah, it's amazing. You see some people's on public profiles and they just nail color every time. It's my kryptonite. I struggle with it. The biggest thing.
It's hard. Yeah.
I always call myself a color palette pirate because I do the same thing, Agata. I'm always stealing people's colors.
Yes. Hello.
Eyedropper is my best friend.
Right.
All right. Our next meeting is going to be pretty basic, you guys. That's because we are focusing on Back to Viz basics. We have Eric Balish with us. He's going to be in our community spotlight talking about Back to Viz basics project. We will have Hideaki Yamamoto joining us to look at his digital quality of life index, which was part of the Back to Viz basics challenge that got a viz of the day. And then Will Sutton is going to be joining us. He's going to be talking about Tableau MCP server and how you can use it to, I believe, reverse engineer vizes that you find on Tableau Public. Another great way to learn Tableau and enhance your skills. So that will be on February 19th. So we hope to see you all at that meeting. And just to close it out, if you want your own viz of the day, some tips that we have included here. Creating a timely or topical viz is always a great way to get a viz of the day. Highlighting new Tableau features, spotlighting diverse Tableau communities, including novel chart types, which I just said you don't have to do, but you can. They do like to focus on novel chart types as well, or cool Tableau tricks, and communicating a key insight or story, and then making it visually stunning. So we would love for you all to get viz of the day and have you here with your own custom song in one of our meetings in the future. So thank you all so much for joining us today, skipping Matthew Miller at the Tableau Newbie Tug and joining us today. So hope to see you all in February. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.